So we're picking up in the book of Habakkuk, and quite an interesting prophecy, probably prophesied around somewhere just prior to 605 BC, because it looks like it was before the Battle of Carchemish, when the Babylonians became the undisputed power in the area. So before Babylon became undisputed power in the area, Habakkuk is prophesying this, it looks like. So that happened in 605, so probably just a little bit before that. So Israel is gone as a nation. They've been overtaken by the Assyrians. That was in like 722 or whatever. And we're looking at coming up to the time of when Babylon will take over the northern kingdom in Judah. But Habakkuk in the meantime is crying out, and he's calling out and saying, God, are you forgetting about the wickedness that's going on? How can you put up with this? And it's the wickedness that's going on among his own people. And so what we see in verse 1:1 again, it says, the oracle which Habakkuk the prophet saw. So once again, it's an oracle, or the words that are going to come forth, but he saw this. And so once again, so many of these things come in visions or dreams or appearances. And like I say, that's nice. It's nice. You be a prophet and you get to see the Lord or see angels or see these things. But often the life of the prophet wasn't all that great, as they got blasted by just about everybody. So yeah, you can cry out and say, I'd like to be a prophet. I'd like to have those visitations. Well, there's responsibilities that come with it too. Habakkuk, so he's crying out to God for justice in view of all the evil. And so we read verse 2, chapter 1, how long, O Lord, will I call for help? And thou wilt not hear. I cry out to thee violence, yet thou dost not save. So, God, look what's going on. Do something. Do something. Why dost thou make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Why do we have all these rotten politicians and everything's not working out right? Why are you letting me see this? Why don't you do something? Strife exists and contention arises. Therefore the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. This is so good here. For the wicked surround the righteous, therefore justice comes out perverted. And what we see this is that we've just seen in some of the other prophets the cry against, it says, you don't even rule anything unless you get some money for it. You take a bribe or you got to be paid off. And here it says, the wicked are surround the just so much, justice is never upheld. It says, for the wicked surround the righteous, therefore justice comes out perverted. When the wicked are all around the righteous, then justice just doesn't come out right. And here it says, I love it, it says justice comes out perverted. But the message here is, although you're seeing all this, God's doing something that it's so amazing. It's almost too much to hear. Your ears are going to buzz when you hear this. It's God's raising up the Chaldeans or the Babylonians as a rod of discipline against Judah. So he's raising up a ruthless people as his own instrument to come as judgment against God's people. And so in verse 6 we see, chapter 1, for behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that fierce and impetuous people who march throughout the earth to seize dwelling places which are not theirs. They are dreaded and feared. Their justice and authority originate with themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards. Whoa, okay. Now let's skip down to verse 12. It says, art thou not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We will not die. Thou, O Lord, hast appointed them to judge, and thou, O rock, hast established them to correct. Thine eyes are too pure to approve evil, and thou canst not look on wickedness with favor. Why dost thou look with favor on those who deal treacherously? Why art thou silent when the wicked swallow up those more righteous than they? So there's a twofold complaint going on with Habakkuk. First is, why don't you do something about the trouble that's going on in Judah? And secondly, how can you use these evil people to come and do this to us? Aren't you going to do something about that? I mean, how can you even put up with that? And God's explained to Habakkuk that he's got this plan. He's going to use them as an instrument, and they're going to suffer their consequences later on. But God will use that people as his instrument to enact discipline against his people that are living in such a godless way. So chapter 2 says, verse 2, then the Lord answered me and said, record the vision and inscribe it on tablets, that the one who reads it may run. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. So first of all here, it's almost like there's this prophecy coming, the vision's coming, I'm telling you what's coming ahead, and if you see this, run. Get out of town. It's like when Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation take place in the holy place, get out of Jerusalem and Judea. Get out of there. Judah, get out, run. But he says, for the vision is yet for the appointed time, verse 3. It hastens toward the goal, it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it will certainly come, it will not delay. So he's promising, says this really is coming. There really is coming this judgment upon the land, this horrible thing where this horrible people is going to come and they're going to execute judgment upon the people of God for their discipline. And of course, we always have that prophetic hope, and we'll see that once again in this chapter. There's prophetic hope for the people of God. There's prophetic hope for in this case, Judah. But, there's, like we looked in Nahum, there was not a prophetic hope for Nineveh anymore. It's over for them. But because there's this promise towards God's people and towards Jerusalem and towards the ones that he's chosen for a purpose to dwell there, to have the covenants and all of that. There's a purpose for them. And so he says, there's always a hope, a restoration hope for them. So we get to verse 4 in chapter 2, and there's some really great verses here in Habakkuk. This is one of them. And he explains this, behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right within him. Okay, so the proud one, if somebody's really proud, they're not in right relationship with God. Their soul is not right within them. He says, but the righteous will live by his faith. This is the verse, the half of the verse that Paul the Apostle quotes in the New Testament, and he says, but the just shall live by faith. And he builds his preaching, his foundational statement for all of his preaching about how someone becomes righteous in the kingdom of God. It's by their faith. And so here Habakkuk's explaining that. He says the proud, their soul's not right within them, but the righteous, they live by faith. They live by their faith. And so there's a warning comes out here then in verse 5. Furthermore, wine betrays the haughty man, so that he does not stay at home. He enlarges his, when you're under the influence, you don't make the best decisions. He enlarges his appetite like Sheol, and he is like death, never satisfied. He also gathers to himself all nations and collects to himself all peoples. Will not all of these take up a taunt song against him, even mockery and insinuations against him, and say, woe to him who increases what is not his. Listen to this. Good counsel for our day. For how long? And makes himself rich with loans. Okay? Makes himself rich with loans. Will not your creditors rise up suddenly, and those who collect from you awaken? Indeed, you will become plunder for them. And so there's a warning here and some practical information here for us in this day. Don't just make yourself rich with loans. Someday they're going to come along and say, you owe me, and today's the day you pay me somehow. And so he's saying it's a lot of ways it's just a false buildup of things, and he's warning this people that don't care about much of anything, don't have any righteousness, it seems at all. They just will do whatever. And here it says, I can get rich doing it this way, but their day will come. There's always that day of reckoning. So in spite of the wickedness, God still has a plan. In verse 14 of chapter 2 it says, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Okay, there's a plan that God has when finally the knowledge of the glory of the Lord is going to cover the earth. And once again, so many of these passages, somewhere in all of these prophets, it seems to relate to that last day, that final day, the entering in of the Messiah reigning in his kingdom on the earth. And there's always this allusion, this going back to that as our hope, that's God's final intention, that's going to come to pass. And we need to hear it now, because if we don't hear it now, we get despairing about the things that are going on in the world. So he says, verse 15, woe to you who make your neighbors drink, who mix in your venom even to make them drunk, so as to look on their nakedness. So, this isn't uncommon, even in our day. You will be filled with disgrace rather than honor. Now you yourself drink and expose your own nakedness. The cup in the Lord's right hand will come around to you, and utter disgrace will come upon your glory. So a message here is, for one, he's got a plan where his glory is going to fill the earth. But, there still is judgment and accountability for all the wicked things that people are doing. And you need to take that into heart even now. It says, don't force your neighbor to drink and get drunk so you could take advantage of them. And here he's just saying that whole thing that you're doing to others is going to come around to you, and it's going to be an utter disgrace for you.